Tashile, and welcome to our class on Heart Essence of Tibetan Buddhism. We're getting close to the end here. This is number 26. And so we welcome you back. As a part of that, we begin by taking in a deep breath, slowly in and slowly out. Calming your mind and body into profound peace. And then we begin with the refuge prayer. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent for the benefit of all sentient beings. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent for the benefit of all sentient beings. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent for the benefit of all sentient beings. So, by the way, Peter is here. I was thinking of a different Peter. Anyway, last week we examined the basics of Trekcho Dzogchen, and based upon the indirect approach. So today we continue with chapter 18 at page 113 or 313, if you're following along in the book, and the leap over of Togal, known as sky gazing. So that is our focus today. So Togal means leaping over. It is still generally a secret teaching in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. But then some teachers in the Bon tradition began publishing some of these teachings, and a few others followed from that. And not all sources are accessible, with some requiring authorization from qualified masters to purchase them. But even that is in decline. It's opening access beyond the very fortunate enough to have received the instructions directly from a master. As with Trekcho, more will likely follow. The following is a fairly detailed description within the bounds of or similar to publicly available information, public available information. And Togal is closely related to the visualizations of the 5 Buddha families. So let's talk a little bit about that first. So the 5 Buddha families represent the 5 bodhisattva manifestations of a Buddha. They are not actual separate Buddhas, but represent some of the significant qualities of the Buddhas in pure view. With pure view, the aggregates are actually seen as the Buddhas, and the elements are seen as their consorts, and so forth. In addition, you do not abandon the 5 poisons. They are viewed as an aid to your practice. We use our desire, for example, to transform our attachments to ordinary things in order to increase our desire for liberation. In so doing, we realize that the 5 poisons actually represent the 5 wisdoms, even the 5 Buddhas themselves. So the sutra requested by Sagaramati says, the more disturbing emotions a bodhisattva has, the stronger the fire of wisdom will blaze. So this is kind of just flipping everything over in terms of the way we normally view things. It is also a convenient way of memorizing various concepts, enumerated as 5. The following chart, which is in the book there, and chapter 15, includes some of the key characteristics that have been associated with these families and the 5 Buddha activities. include peaceful activities of pacifying illness and negative emotions and enriching the increased merit, lifespan, and medicinal experiences. Wrathful activities of magnetizing to attract favorable circumstances and subduing to reduce inner and outer obstacles and negative forces. And finally, there is the main activity of the teaching of the Dharma. So the chart that is in the book shows the 5 Buddhas. There's actual images of each one across the top, although they're small, so they're not real clear. But what I wanted to do here is go through each of these and just highlight some of the characteristics associated with each of them. So in this chart has 5 columns, one for each of the 5 Buddha families. And then it has a list across of the various characteristics of each of those. So for example, we start with the Buddha representation. So in the Buddha, for the Buddha family, the first of those is Vairochana. And for the Vajra family, which is the second, but the first level is Akshobhya. And then the family, the jewel family is Ratnasambhava, the lotus family is Amitabha, and the karma family is Amoghasiddhi. Get the idea of how this is laid out here. So the next row are the aggregates associated with each of those. So in the Buddha family, it's form. In the Vajra family, it's consciousness. In the Jewel family, it's feeling. And in the Lotus family, perception. In the Karma family are thoughts. In terms of the consort in the Buddha family is white Tara. In the Vajra family is Lochana. In the Jewel family, Mamaki. In the Lotus family, Pandara. And in the Karma family, green Tara. Each of them also has an element associated with them. And so instead of linking them with each of the 5 here, I'm just going to read down through them and look at the table in your book. Space, water, earth, fire, and air, or wind. And then they have colors. The first one, white, blue, gold or yellow, red, and green. And then a location. Now the location typically, whether it's up, if it's up, then we would start usually we start at the bottom, which is the east, but in this case it starts in the center and then goes east and then rotates around from that to the south, the west at the top, and then the north on the other side. So when we look at different kinds of maps, for example, the north is always at the top, regardless of what direction you're always looking at. In Buddhism, the images are always facing east. And so that's at either the bottom, or if it's flat, it would be closest to you. And even if you happen to be represented as being in the center, it's still the east is the one in front of you, and then the other ones go around behind. So the colors, then we go on to the location here, the center, the east, southwest, and north that I mentioned, and then there's a symbol for each of these as well. The wheel, Vajra, jewel, lotus, and double Vajra. So each of them have one of those. And then there is a mudra or hand gesture associated with each of these. And so I want to show you these as well. So let me list them first. There's teaching, earth touching, giving, meditation, and fearlessness. So the gesture in terms of the teachings is on the right side, the hand is out this way, and the left hand is across in the other way. So it's kind of looks a little bit like this. It's not real clear. And then touching is like the Buddha, the image of the Buddha with his hand with the finger down touching the earth. And then the giving is the palm up this way, out. And so we see this, for example, on green Tara. And then the meditation is the typical view of the palm, the right on top of the left palm, resting down at your lower abdomen. And then the last one is is related to fearlessness, and this one is the palm at the chest, but looking away. So it's at the chest, but it's like you're pushing away things. So the fearlessness, I can push you away kind of a thing. So the next row are related to the poisons. The first one is delusion, then hatred or anger. There's 5 columns, there's 6 poisons, so this one gets overlapped with each other. So hatred or anger are associated with the second column, then greed or pride, and then desire and jealousy. In the wisdom row, which is the next one, the first one is all accommodating, or Dharmata. The second one is a mirror-like wisdom. The third one, equanimity, then discriminating wisdom, and finally, all-accomplishing wisdom. And then the activity row shows teaching, pacifying, enriching or increasing, magnetizing and organizing things. So magnetizing pulls things in and then also helps organizing those. And then subduing. So those are the 5 activities. And finally, there are realms specifically associated with those as well. And so the first one are the animal realms, and then the hell beings, and then the gods, and the humans, and jealous gods as a part of that. So the gods, for the middle column there, also can, in some cases, include the hungry ghosts. So they're the 6th one that didn't get into one of those by themselves. So it becomes particularly important to recognize these in the Togal practices. Now, we had some of those before when we were looking in some of the Tantra aspects, but it's particularly important in the Togal. They are part of the 4 visions that we'll be talking about today. Familiarity will help facilitate our recognition of those appearances. In Dzogchen Panlop Rinpoche's Plan B that we've mentioned before, familiarity also helps recognize these Buddhas in the second part of the bardo of Dharmata. So these things are interconnected with each other in different ways. If we have not already attained liberation or were unable to transfer our consciousness, this would be the POA practice, to the heart of the Yidam and their pure Buddha field at the time of death, in addition, this is another level of detail or pure view during this life. So we see the aggregates as Buddhas, elements as consorts, poisons as wisdoms with pure view. And so again, familiarity is very important here. So we take some time each day to commit them to our memory and then regularly refresh your memory. So now we go to another part, which is a kind of an introductory phase for doing the practices called the 3 postures. And so the first of these postures is related to the body. So early in the practices of Togal, we learn the 3 postures. And so I want to show you, you can see this is a diagram or a picture that you can see the three postures there. And so the one over, losing them here. So the one on this side, behind my hand here, okay, is associated with the adept. Then the one at the bottom is the elephant posture, and then the other one is the lion posture. So those are the three postures associated with this. Now there are some different versions of these, so we'll look at some of that here momentarily. So the body one is early in the practice of Togal, we learn these three postures. So the adept is associated with Nirmanakaya, and the elephant with Sambhogakaya, and the lion with Dharmakaya. And so these postures are used in the visioning practices of Togal. In some cases, they may be rather difficult to do, and you do your best. And it is also okay to just use your imagination for these. So the posture, the adept, the one that was on the right-hand side with his arms around his knees, the knees are drawn up together to the chest, his back is straight, and the right arm is over the left arm, which are resting on the knees. The gaze is downward, although in the image it almost looks like he's looking up. I'm not real clear on that one. And this posture is used to gain control over the vital energies of the mind. The winds abide in stillness at the heart mind. The posture of the elephant, which is the one in the center, is like resting on your folded legs. And so his legs are folded back under his knees, and then he's bent over like a resting elephant onto his elbows on the ground, and the chin. Now here it said that the chin is resting on your hands. So you would have them and your head would be on them in this way. But the image of this one, the hands are just out and his head is more upward. So we see variations in these. It's hard to find images that match the texts. And so we do that, and the gaze in this particular case is either ahead or side to side. And then this posture is used to see the pure visions of primordial wisdom. The third posture is the lion of two different types. So there's different texts that present these in two different ways. So I'm going to do both of those. The traditional posture, which is the one that was depicted in the image there, is squatting like a lion, a seated lion, or think of a cat when they're sitting upward. They're on their rear end, if you will, with a straight back, the feet on the ground, arms straight down to the ground, in this case, between the knees. So usually a cat would be a head, but it's between the actual knees on the ground. And then the hands are in the Vajra fist. The Vajra fist, if you're not familiar with it, the thumb is in the palm and then the fingers go over it. And so we're pressing those down here. So you may substitute a dream yoga lion posture or even lie on your back. So there's the lion posture is where you're on your side and your hand this way, or you can even just lie on your back. So there are options available here. The gaze for all of these is up. And so when you're lying down or on your side, it's a little easier sometimes to look up. This posture is used to stop deceptive appearances. What remains is the view of Dharmakaya. So the second type of the lion posture is described in Yeshe Lama, the book called Yeshe Lama, and is probably the most dominant of all of the texts in terms of Dzogchen, which says that the traditional posture is incorrect. This approach is a seated posture with a straight back, knees spread apart, so it's more like a sitting for meditation. Your legs are, knees are out and in front of you. And so then the soles of the feet are together. So that's kind of like bringing your hands together. But in this case, it's the feet coming together. And your back is straight. The knees then are folded outward and then placed where the soles join together. So on top where the soles join together. So the hands are right on top of the feet in this case. The gaze and purpose are the same as the first one. So Khenpo Jime Phuntsok Rinpoche recommended doing the lion posture to look at the sun. We'll talk about that in a minute. The elephant posture to look at the moon, and the adept posture to look at a candle. So those are the three gazes that are associated with these postures. All three postures may be used to focus on space, looking up at the sky. The real focus is on the nature of mind, pure awareness. Some sources also list the practice, a practice visualizing the crystal Kati channel. And recall, we talked about that before. From the heart, there's a channel that goes up into the crown of the head. It naturally is focused forward, or it may be pointed down, or it may be pointed upward. So we looked at that previously in Tantra, and then without any analytical process in this case at all, simply being aware as if the heart is projecting through the Kati channel and the eyes into space. With time, heart, channel, and eyes, the space seem to merge together into one. Now, what we just went through is associated with the body aspect of this. So we have body, speech, and mind. So that was the body. Now, the next one is speech, which is very simple. There are no prayers or mantras in this tradition to recite during the main practice. Padmasambhava says to first limit talking for 3 to 4 times a day. So we don't do much talking when we're doing these practices. And then less and less until you don't talk at all. Okay? So a retreat really is the best place to do this. So you're silent like a mute. And then the third one, the mind aspect. There are 3 objects used for focus here. Traditionally, these are the sun, moon, and a lamp. So looking directly at the sun, as I mentioned, we needed to talk about the sun, is risky. It can cause actual literal blindness. And so we need to be very careful. I do not recommend it. And even Khenchen Lama recommends that we do some of alternatives. There are several alternatives here. When done, it should be done through a sun filter or by limiting it just to a few rays between the fingers of your hand and so forth. Now, you can put your fingers up in front of your hand, and there are little tiny gaps there. And so you can look at the rays that are poking through. So that's one way to do that. But it only should be done just as the sun is rising or setting. At those points, there's less likelihood that you're going to have damage to your eyes. So doing it just as it's first arising in the morning or when it's going down in the horizon in the afternoon. And so we only also do it just for a few seconds at a time, and only for a few times. And so we can do it for a few seconds and then stop looking at it for a little while and then get another quick glance at it and so forth. That's the way that version is done. Alternately, and possibly safer is to look to either side of the sun about 1 cubit, which is the length from your elbow to your fingers. And so a cubit, the way to do that would be the length from the fingertips at your eyes, the middle of your eyes, and then out to here. That means looking out this way, which is quite a ways away from the point of the sun itself. Okay, not completely to the side, but almost. And so that is another tradition, is a part of this. And then this approach is in a seated posture with a straight back. The knees are spread apart, so kind of folded outward, and the soles of the feet are together and close to the body. The hands are in Vajra fists and placed where the soles join together. So again, on top of the soles together as a part of that. Oops, I'm sorry. I got in the wrong place on the page here. Okay, so then this other alternative, the second object is at night is the moon. I did want to mention a couple other things related to the sun in the mind, and that is one of the things that Khenchen Lama teaches is to look to the north. Then you're never looking directly at the sun. So that's another safer way to do this. But the second object is observed at night. And so a full moon, which is visible on clear nights with 2 or 3 days each month, because the moon's a little bit smaller than the sun, so it actually isn't a full status, even though we say this is the actual full moon. It's very full for a period of 1 or 2 days on either side of that. And then the third object is a lamp. And so just a lamp, a bright lamp that you can look at, can refer to a butter lamp or a candle, either as a part of that, or some other bright light. So seeing Dharmata, the nature of mind, is what this is all about. The goal of the next practice is seeing Dharmata, sometimes called reality itself. It is said to have the qualities of infinity as well as the heart essence, although it may be best to simply say it just is. The path of great perfection, there is no difference between seeing and not seeing, appearance and emptiness. Phenomena are seen as the divine manifestation of the heart mind, just as it is. So what appears to our mind when looking at a bright light is none other than mind itself. So the mind comes in from outside, but then it goes into our brain. And then our brain is what actually creates what we perceive as this light. So this may be the form of rays of light or bindus and such in this practice, but it is important to experience the object as mind itself, which is neither a thing nor no thing. The actual visions are seen by squinting the eyes in the beginning, giving a taste for the 4 visions of Togal. So this is kind of a preliminary practice to the actual Togal. The postures are alternated to explore which work best for you. Padmasambhava does not prescribe a particular posture for this or other Togal practices. Most sources leave this as a kind of open question. They don't specify one. It's usually these 3 things, body, speech, and mind, and those 3 visions and so forth, are done as a preliminary practice, not the actual sky gazing per se, but it does transition into that. So most sources leave this as an open question. However, at least one source links the Rishi Nirmanakaya pose to the first vision, the elephant Sambhogakaya pose to the second vision, and the lion Dharmakaya pose to the third vision. Any of these poses may be used for the fourth vision. So there's these 4 visions that we'll be looking at. Since this practice provides an introduction to the 4 visions, it is good to get some experience with each of those. The best location is on a mountain or a hill with an open view, though other open spaces may be fine as well. So ideally, you want to do these outside, and you want to have a clear open space. If you've got a lot of trees around, that means you have to look up, and that can be more difficult to do on your neck and so forth, but you can lay down. Maybe you've got a lounge chair or something that you can sit back in, and that makes it a lot easier. Kenshin Lama and I, one time when I was visiting him in Europe, we went on a little hike up this trail, and there was a nice hillside that was actually a fenced-in area for cattle. They weren't there right at that moment, but we went through the gate and went up and found a place, and we just sat down and then laid back. And on the hillside, we could look up at the sky very easily as we did the practice. So that is one of the ways to do that. But having a lounge chair or something that's tilted back can also be used. So this is also preparation for the bardo of Dharmata. So these are very carefully linked in a number of different ways. So this includes the experience of clear light that we talked about in the bardos, and the appearances of the 100 peaceful and wrathful yidams. So if those are recognized as the nature of mind, then we will become enlightened at that time. So the first practice is seeing Dharmata. So we began with the traditional things that we've been doing all along, the practice, setting our intention, the brief nundro, the 9-round breathing. And so now we go into these 3 parts. So the first part is the body, the 3 kaya postures that we mentioned before. The primordial awareness of the body, those 3. So Nirmanakaya is the adept posture in the control of the vital energies of the mind. And so we do these one at a time. We use that posture, and that is the point of focus. Then the Sambhogakaya uses the elephant posture, and then to see the pure visions of primordial wisdom. Okay. And so you look back at the primordial wisdom and the pure visions associated with that. And then the next one is the Dharmakaya, as I mentioned before, the lion posture. And here to stop deceptive appearances. So we go through and we do all of those to start this with. You don't have to do them for a long time, but just become comfortable with doing them over and over. Then the second part is the speech, which is just being silent like a mute. They actually can overlap with the first one, because if you're not talking or anything like that, then you're actually in that posture. Maybe not the posture, but you're doing the same kind of thing at that time. And then the third one is the mind, which is a focus on the object itself. So it's not just looking up at the sky, but an object in or around the sky. So the sun, the moon, and the lamp. Now, the lamp would typically be indoors, but it could be something that you have outdoors around your house that you can do at night as well. So we rotate the practice, alternate the postures and objects. So to some extent, this is an experiment. You're trying out the different postures, you're trying out the different views and so forth as a part of that, to get comfortable with it and to just begin the idea of sky gazing in this kind of a context. And then the dedication is as the practices before. And then post-meditation is to continue to seek opportunities to practice with the postures and objects of focus throughout the day and night. So anytime you have an opportunity during the day or night, you can do a short one of these and then whatever other things that you have to do. So we just take advantages of opportunities as many times as we can each day. So there are also another thing associated with these are the lamps. Now we've mentioned a lamp as a part of this, but these are a different set of lamps, okay? And there's actually two versions of them, so we'll go through both. So these include the sun, the moon, and the lamp described above. Those are the outer appearances of a lamp. Various texts also describe either 4 or 6 lamps as inner appearances, which is what we're looking at here. Both inner and outer appearances are of the nature of mind because we're seeing and it's going into our brain, and the mind creates the image. It is the context in this context, it refers not to a butter lamp or a candle, but enlightened mind that is like a lamp. It illuminates the darkness of ignorance. Mantra Shri practice, if you recall that one. There are a few different lists of the 4 or 6 lamps. Names also vary. Nevertheless, these lists will give you a general idea of their nature and purpose to relate to the 4 visions that we're going to be doing. But here, we'll focus on these lamps. So the first one's called the fluid lasso lamp. The eyes that serve as a door for the inner light is as an outer appearance. So the light is considered to be from inside going out. Okay. The door to the arising of the other 3 lamps like a projector. So we think of this like it comes from our heart that's projecting it out into the sky. So the lamp of pure space is the second one, the pure appearance of a dark blue sky for projection of the next 2 lamps. So it's like a movie screen. And then the third, the lamp of an empty tigli, the colored light drops, tiglis and bindus that we've talked about before, which form groups and grow in size like a projection on the screen. So we began having these little dots or little tiny circles and other kind of things. But as we continue to do this, it begins to grow and change. And then the fourth one is the lamp of self-arisen discriminating awareness, non-dual awareness, insight, or realization. And this is more of a mental understanding of this. Then the other set that I mentioned are the 6 lamps. These are the first one, the lamp of the ground. This is referring to the essence, the nature and compassion or Buddha nature of all. And then the second one is Chitta, the lamp of the flesh. And so it's the presence of the ground in the heart. And Chitta is heart, so it's in the heart. And then the lamp of the hollow crystal Kati channel. So we're going back to that approach. It's connecting the heart to the eyes, if you'll recall. And then the fourth one is the fluid lasso lamp. So the eyes that serve as the door, if you will, for the inner light as outer appearance. So it's like it's radiating that out as if there's something out there. And then the lamp for the bardo of Dharmata, related to the Togal visions, to the bardo and the possibility of liberation during this lifetime. And then the last one, the 6th one, is the lamp of the ultimate result, Buddhahood. So that's the 6. The first 4 of those 6 are probably the more common version of 4, but there's variations. Togal as a form of practice has a lot of variation. So the likelihood is that this was developed and evolved in a number of different sources across Tibet and eventually became consolidated to some degree, but there's still these variety of things. And then as a part of this, the eye is considered to be fluid in nature. It's like a lasso. It reaches out to things far away. So it's like it's reaching out and grabbing the things and bringing them back into our mind. And like a lamp, it illuminates, and therefore it is called the fluid lasso lamp. From this, the Buddha manifests in the aspect of the Vajra strands of awareness. Okay? We read that again. The Buddha manifests in the aspect of the Vajra strands, or as the Vajra strands of awareness. Vajra strands are little strings that appear in the early parts of doing these practices. So these lamps are said to enable us to see the visions that arise and recognize them as none other than one's own mind. Okay? Leading quickly to Buddhahood in this lifetime. So this leads us then to the first of the four visions. So this is a preparation for that, to get ready for that. And so usually doing those lamp visions are something that we might do before we actually go into the formal part of the practice and get some experience with it. But it can be the first part of each of these levels as well. So we're going to start the four visions of Togal. Today we're only going to do two of the four. So the second one is actually just a continuation of the first one, so they're very close. So while Trekcho focuses on primordial purity, the focus of Togal is on the spontaneous presence of the dynamic radiant display. That is the non-dual manifestation of emptiness as energy. Trekcho focuses on Dharmakaya, a non-conceptual form. Togal focuses on Sambhogakaya, the Yidam visions. Emptiness is an expression as the ground of being. Togal then builds upon the experience of Trekcho. So this is seen as the four visions of Togal. That's the reason that we do the Trekcho version first and then the Togal after that. Now, there are some versions of these teachings that reverse those. Togal, the rationale would be that Togal is actually closer to the kind of things that we see in doing Tantra than what we do in terms of the Trekcho. It's more like an extension of those other kind of things. But there's rationale to go either direction. So now these things then are the four are called the direct perception of reality itself. And so the category is reality itself. And the second one is progress in visionary experience. Like I said, those two are pretty much the same, but we're making progress. The third one is reaching consummate awareness. And then the fourth one is extinction into reality itself. So those are the four. It can take quite a long time for each of those to manifest over time. The phrase clear light is often used in Tibetan Buddhism to express the quality of transcendent wisdom. It is not light in the common sense of the word. Here, clear refers to the emptiness of the ultimate, and light refers to the clarity of the primordial state. So one of the things that we learn about Dzogchen is that it takes terms that we have seen in Tantra and it shifts them around somewhat. And so that's one of the things that we have to learn to be familiar with in that process. And then its clarity is emptiness. And then you cannot be distracted from awareness of the natural state transcendent wisdom. Okay, so that's the idea. We get to a point where that can't go away. It's permanent. That's another problem, but that's another issue. That's transcendent wisdom, this sacred outlook, pure awareness, or Rigpa. In Togal, first, the clear light manifests as spontaneous visions of energy. The specific forms and colors may vary from one individual to another. So these are not fixed experiences. So the following descriptions may or may not be exactly representative of your experience. During the meditation, the visions of energy manifest as colors or lights. The colors correspond to those of the 5 Buddha families that we mentioned previously. They may have tiny dots of light alone or in chains, so it can be kind of a sprinkling of those things, or it can be a gathering of them together into clusters. The strings or large amorphous forms as a part of those. At first, these visions move, sometimes very fast, and are difficult or impossible to stop the movement. They are sometimes clear and sometimes not. Do not gaze at them directly, nor try to make them appear. You just pick a place, you stay focused on that point, and the things are going to be going on around that. If you see a bindu out there and you look at that, then all of a sudden it's moved. Okay, so anytime you move your eyes, it's all going to move. So you have to be focused on one particular point. So they will then come naturally. If you try to see more or focus on them, they will disappear, as I was saying. Let them begin to stabilize, and they will do it on their own. Now, they will be a little bit moving around, but if you can stabilize your eye, then they will also stabilize as a part of that. In the second stage, then, everything appears as light. We all see colors, and visions are pure and clear. The visions become increasingly large and stable. The third stage has various forms that appear. The visions are clear and stable. There is no difference between internal and external visions. So this is where you are, where they're coming from. So is it coming from inside or is it coming from outside? And so a unification occurs, and then we view all in pure awareness, pure presence, the sacred outlook. We realize that the source of all visions is our primordial state, transcendent wisdom. The external world is seen as light, and all is one taste that transcends subject-object duality. So it's all in your mind. We spontaneously remain in a state of undistracted meditative equipoise. So that's why learning to meditate in that form previously is very important for this. It's very non-conceptual in the way that we approach all of this. And then in the final stage here, everything disappears into emptiness. There are no more visions, only direct, unmediated experience, beyond words, empty like space, like a clear sky. You abide in ultimate understanding of Buddhahood. The crucial point is not whether you have visions, but whether you identify with and grasp onto them. Some people say that these visions are a delusion. Some say they are truth. In great perfection, there is neither delusion nor truth. Okay? Those are just concepts. We are neither attached nor deluded by what it is. One practice used in the faculty of experience for the basic space of phenomena is called sky gazing.
This is the way that we usually do this practice. This is the main meditative practice of Togal, during which you gaze into the empty sky with nothing specific upon which to focus your gaze. It helps give sense of the vast openness or space-like quality of transcendent wisdom. Now, one of the issues that comes up is that this is supposed to be a clear sky. I don't know about you, but ever since I moved down here to Arizona, I discovered that we almost always have clouds in the sky, even though it's very warm and so forth. It's almost hard sometimes to really get a clear blue sky. There's almost these little tiny puffy things or kind of just very light versions and so forth. So we have to be careful because these can disrupt what you're trying to accomplish. So some sources suggest looking close to the sun, although again, like we mentioned before, that's not actually recommended. So we don't look at it, but extended direct sunlight can be very harmful to your eyes. So as I mentioned before, His Holiness Khenchen Lama says to look at the sky away from the sun, even in the opposite direction. So if the sun is in the east, we look in the west, or vice versa. Or alternate to that, look to the north as a part of it. So when you're looking for where to look in the sky, the sun's going to be in the sky somewhere, unless it's all cloudy, in which case that's not going to work out very well anyway. So, however, some lamas and sources recommend a different approach based on the hollow crystal Kati channel that we mentioned before that connects the heart to the eyes. It is visualized as going up the central channel through the head and over the level of the ears. So the channel goes up, you may recall from our previous description, and then goes out of the eyes. It is this practice, the empty sky acts like a large blank movie screen. And then the visions are actually projected outwards, manifestations of the indestructible drop in the heart chakra. Remember, we talked about that. So it's viewed as actually projecting that out into the sky. This tends to result in a much clearer and detailed visions, like a dream, than the visions of just gazing generally, although this may vary from one person to another. The images are manifestations of heart-mind. Recall that everything we perceive is actually being experienced in our mind, even if it appears to be outside of us. So light comes into our brain through our eyes, but our brain creates the image that we are seeing, so to speak, out there. After meditation, the energy remains apparent. Everything is energy, everything is light. It may appear to vibrate or glow. It may be stable or fluid. So these things there's a variety of different possibilities here in the way this all fits together. So the discriminating awareness developed in an analytical meditation now manifests experientially. You can see our sense transcendent wisdom, the energy and the radiant manifestation of that energy as form, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. And though they are distinct in their qualities, they are of one taste, both and. In the tradition, Dharmakaya can only be seen by a Buddha, Sambhogakaya by a highly realized bodhisattva, and Nirmanakaya by ordinary beings. But we are all Buddhists from the advanced level of Dzogchen point of view. So body, speech, and mind abide in the natural state. Everything is spontaneous. There is no particular regard for what others might think, say, or do. All is within the pure view. The chart that we're going to talk about here again in the book, was developed from numerous sources to provide a helpful overview of the four visions in terms of first the actual visions, that's the first of these, and then their true nature, which is the second. The third are ordinary signs of accomplishment for each. And then we keep that in mind that the actual experience is of each person, and that will vary. Okay, so we're all somewhat different from each other. So it's a little hard to sometimes compare with each other because of that difference. So the chart that is listed in the book has three columns. It's called the Four Visions of Togal, outer, inner, and ordinary. And so the three columns are those three: outer visions, the inner true nature, and ordinary signs. Okay? So I'm going to go down through one column at a time. And the first time, we're only going to look at the first vision. Okay? So look in space free of clouds, as we have been talking about. Bindus moving will stabilize over time. Bindus, little dots or little tiny circles. Hands and faces are signs of compassion that may begin to arise as a part of that. The rainbows, empty bindus, and Vajra chains begin to show up in the more elaborate versions. And then they tend to scatter into whiteness. Okay? Now, not everybody's going to see all of those things, but those are examples. In terms of the inner true nature for this first cycle, awareness without other, that is, everything is mind, so it's not separating the two. Thoughts projected and return as a self-display, insubstantial, like space. And then directly ascertain suchness. Should be familiar with that word now. And then abide in emptiness, even when dreaming. So it has a dream yoga here can be helpful. If you're doing dream yoga, it can facilitate the experience of these. The third column, excuse me, is ordinary signs that we might see. Devotion to a lama as a Buddha. No interest in mundane activities. Exert yourself in virtue and avoid non-virtue. Love and compassion arise effortlessly. Control gross afflictive emotions like hatred, lust, and delusion. And then experiences of bliss, clarity, and nothingness, or non-thought, excuse me. And then lightness of body, feeling, and everything is insubstantial and evanescent. And finally, a voice like a mute. Silence. Okay. So the second, because we're going to do two of these, and as I mentioned, the second one is just an extension of the first one. In some ways, all of them become extensions of each other, but these first two are very, very close to each other. So here, going back to the first column, the outer visions, if you will, the pattern of visions include things like lattice or a curtain or horizontal or vertical lines, larger objects and yidams or bindus. And so they begin to, usually it might be like a face or a head or something like that rather than the whole thing. And then the bindus inside of other bindus, so lights inside of lights or circles inside of other circles. Subtle and coarse, clear, dazzling, fascinating. Various symbols and syllables might appear. Things that appear to be jewels or little flickers and bodies of light or torsos and heads increasing in sizes. So then usually in the beginning, when the first level, they're pretty tiny, but then they begin to grow and get larger. In the appearances during and after meditation as light and rainbow bindus increasing clarity until vanish into continuous displays of light. So these are things that can happen in regular meditation when you're doing this as an experiential kind of meditation at other times. And then your body emits the light or is light, and it expands above, below, and all around. So then the second column about the nature short list here on the progress in visionary experience: bliss, clarity, and non-thoughts as mind. No solid reference point or clinging. Those, they're kind of vague. And then everything is a luminous display. Should be kind of obvious. And then realize even while dreaming. So you have experience of these things that also begin to show up in your dreams as well. And then the signs, the various signs include devotion grows deeper, commitment. Attachment and aversion begins to vanish. We are liberated from accepting or rejecting pleasure or pain, right or wrong, self or other. Those are characteristic of Dzogchen practices. But I always have to remind us Padmasambhava's statement, my mind is vast as space, but my actions are refined as barley flour. So there's always that kind of an issue. And then ordinary thinking dissolves into the expanse of awareness. Feel incredible lightness of being. We can express teachings that we haven't even heard previously. We can speak unintentionally, like an echo. You know, it's like you're hearing yourself as if it's an echo as a part of those. So those are some examples. Again, these are not things that everybody is going to experience as a part of them, but they're just examples of possibilities. So I'm going to shift gears just a little bit as a part of that to introduce a couple of things before we go into this as a practice. So rainbow body, you've probably heard about the idea of the rainbow body. So one of the most often features that is considered in a part of Dzogchen is this idea of a rainbow body. So rainbow body is often described as a goal of many different Dzogchen practitioners, roughly equivalent to parinirvana in some other practices. You may remain in bodily form until the time of death. There's 4 different versions of this, which we'll talk about in a moment, even after having attained the rainbow body. So the manifestation of a rainbow body is typically experienced at the time of death itself. One process is near the end of your life. Here you go into a sealed retreat. Your body dissolves into pure energy in the form of light. And people around, like sometimes they do this in a tent, and they see the light glowing from inside of the tent because nobody else is inside the tent with them. Although it is usually described as the body shrinking and vanishing, leaving only hair and nails behind, this is only one of the 4 forms of rainbow body described in various texts. In addition, the rainbow body is often said to happen at the time of the cremation of the body. So rainbow light may appear in the smoke from the cremation, or the sky somewhere else, even distances apart, and people that aren't even around where the cremation is going on, but they see rainbows appearing in places where normally you wouldn't. So there are, or maybe, similar signs at the time of death, even prior to cremation. Some lineages only assert 1 or 2 of these, but there are these 4. So the first one is called small transference. The body shrinks down in size and vanishes, leaving hair and nails behind. This is the most common one. This was the one that I mentioned just moments ago. The second one is called the small rainbow body. So you have two small ones and two great ones. So in this one, the body shrinks in size and vanishes into a rainbow body without a trace. The same without leaving hair and nails behind. So there are no nails behind this one. So that's the difference between those two. And then the third one is the great rainbow body, transmutation like a rainbow vanishing into the sky. It does not include shrinking the body here. And then the fourth one, the full transmutation of a material constituents of the body into the energy of primordial consciousness, which may take place while you are still alive. Consciousness is extended indefinitely into the all-pervasive Dharmakaya. I'm not sure that I can explain that one, but basically the idea here is that the person's body can become fully embraced into this great transference. And so you're already there. You see things, experience things completely in that way. But people can still see you and all those normal kinds of experiences. So those are the four. As I said, most of them only have one or maybe two versions of these. Very uncommon to have a complete list. So in the great perfection tradition, the rainbow body of light is the ultimate accomplishment. However, just as we are already Buddhas, for those who can see, we are also already bodies of light. Some of my teachers have stated that you can choose not to disappear after attaining the rainbow body in order to leave physical relics. This is another thing that you may have experienced. There are people or groups which gather these relics together and take them around to tours around the country, around the world. So these are for the benefit of your own students as treasures, considered to be treasures. So these relics are said to embody the realization or teachings of the master and are often enshrined in a stupa along with other sacred objects. The practices described then below, so get to the second practice here, are quite simple, but they require a great deal of actual practice to achieve them. So the first vision is the direct perception of reality itself. So this is the first of the four visions. The main difference from the previous practice of seeing Dharmata is the object of focus now is the empty sky, sky gazing. Through the hollow kati channel, you look west in the morning and east in the evening, so away from the sun. You can also look north during the middle of the day, or actually you can do it any time during the day. You may use any of the three postures or alternate to find the one that is most suitable for you. I have also found it helpful to use a headrest or even a recliner for support, as I mentioned, when doing this practice for extended periods of looking into the sky. So it's easy to just sit there and look up for a little while. But if you're going to do that for an hour or a half a day or a whole day, then it can kind of hurt your neck. So having a rest is helpful. You can alternate between the formal posture and a more comfortable position as needed. If you have the advantage of doing the practice from a hillside, as I mentioned before, you can look straight ahead or even just up slightly. You don't even have to tilt your head back. Just raise your eyes up somewhat without tilting your head back. Okay, so this practice is number 47. And so we do the preliminary parts, and then without visualizations, thoughts, or words, we gaze at the sky. Our eyes focus on space, the three gazes that we mentioned, through the hollow kati channel, and gain control, develop stability over the vital energies in mind. The object is considered outer, the space, the inner, your pure absolute nature, to heart. The vital energies are our breath, we're still breathing, slow, then hold, and then release. So we're doing it very gently. And then the visions are things that we've mentioned: lights, bindu, strands, rainbows, other things that aren't even on the list can happen. Many small objects with much movement, then movement slow and stabilize over time. And then we just look deeper into space. And then, of course, we do the dedication. It's helpful to keep a notebook of your vision experiences to review periodically regarding your progress, or talk with your teacher about your experiences. Although only a week is allocated for the practices, it's very rare that they would fully develop that spontaneously. They usually take even some months for people to experience those. It is more common for these to take, as I said, a few months or more of extensive practice for that to happen. So practice patience and persistence. The second vision then, so once you've gained that, then we basically continue on in the second one. So we're making progress, as we talked about in the table. Continue sky gazing through the Halokati channel in the selected posture as before. There's more than a pattern to the visions, larger objects, more detail, various yidams, typically in parts, but it can be a whole yidam as a part of that. And then once we are done with that, then there's also a short dedication. So that gets us to the end for today. Those are the practices, the concepts involved in doing these practices and so forth. So next week we'll continue on with the other two levels beyond that, number 3 and number 4. And we only have 3 more classes. We're getting very close to the end now. So let me know again if you have any questions or comments to make. And in between now, just abide softly and deeply in pure awareness with loving kindness, compassion for all sentient beings, always and always. And pray for peace. Thank you very much.